You ever think about the invisible systems that keep our whole world running? The hidden engines that make sure stuff gets made, shelves get stocked, and businesses, well, actually run? Okay, let's get into this because we're about to pull back the curtain on the digital backbone of pretty much every major company and talk about how it's getting one of the biggest upgrades in history.
So you got to ask yourself, what really runs the world's biggest companies? It's not just a famous CEO or a single brilliant idea. Nope, it's something way deeper, a huge interconnected system that touches everything from the raw materials on a factory floor to the final numbers on a balance sheet. It all comes down to this idea of a digital backbone. I want you to think of it like a central nervous system for an entire company. It's the one place where all the information flows together. Finance, manufacturing, the supply chain, HR, everything connected into one single source of truth. We call this system an ERP. But here's the million-dollar question. What happens when that backbone, a system that was basically designed for a different era, starts to get old? What happens when it just can't keep up with how fast and, honestly, how chaotic the world is today?
And that brings us right into our first big topic. We're going to dive into these legacy systems and the very, very modern problems they are causing right now. All right, so let's get the official definition out of the way. Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP for short, is that big integrated software that acts like the company's nervous system. The whole point is to create a smooth, consistent flow of data through every single department. And listen, these things are not new. They really hit the big time back in the 90s, focusing mostly on manufacturing and finance. Then, in the 2000s, they got bigger, adding things like customer relationships and supply chain management. By the 2010s, everything started moving to the cloud, which gave us way better access to all that data. But even with all that evolution, some major cracks were starting to appear. So let's talk about the cracks in this backbone, because they are getting serious. Traditional ERPs are fantastic at telling you what happened last week. The problem is, they have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Their workflows are super rigid, and information gets trapped in these little data silos all over the company. The result? A ton of manual work. Just get this. After Brexit, Vodafone had to spend 12,000 staff hours just to make compliance updates. Why? Because their system just couldn't adapt on its own. It's wild.
But this is where the story takes a huge turn. These old, creaky systems are now getting what I like to call an AI supercharge. It's transforming them from simple record keepers into intelligent, predictive engines that can think for themselves.
I mean, just look at the difference here. It's a night and day shift. We're going from being retrospective, just looking at the past, to being predictive and actually forecasting the future. It's the difference between being reactive, waiting for something to break, and being proactive, getting recommendations before things go wrong. And moving from all that manual input to a system that learns and adapts, it's a total game changer.
So how does all this magic actually happen? Well, it's not just one thing. It's a whole toolkit of AI technologies working together. You've got machine learning, which crunches years of historical data to make incredibly accurate predictions. You've got natural language processing, or NLP, which lets you basically talk to the system in plain English. And then you have robotic process automation, RPA, which takes over all those boring, repetitive jobs, freeing up actual humans to do more important, strategic work.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, but let's talk about what really matters. What does this mean for the bottom line? Let's look at how all this tech talk translates from abstract data into cold, hard cash.
Get ready for this number, $1.2 billion. And that's not some crazy market projection for 10 years from now. That's how much money one single company saved in 1 year. And that company was Walmart. Back in 2022, they started using AI to get way better at forecasting demand for seasonal stuff. By doing that, they cut their forecast mistakes by 34%. That little bit of accuracy directly translated into over $1 billion in savings, mostly from not having to hold so much extra inventory. Incredible. All right, here's another one for you. 37%. This number represents a massive jump in precision for one of the most complicated manufacturing operations on the planet.
We're talking about the automaker Daimler AG. They saw a 37% improvement in their production scheduling accuracy after they brought in an AI-enhanced ERP. But what's really cool is it wasn't just about making things faster. They also slashed their inventory costs by 23%. It just goes to show you, AI doesn't just fix one little problem. It optimizes the entire system.
So, if the results are this amazing, you're probably wondering, Why isn't every single company doing this? Well, there's a reason for that. To get to that pot of gold, you have to run what's called the implementation gauntlet. And trust me, it is not for the faint of heart.
And the numbers? Well, the numbers don't lie. This stuff is hard. According to a big report from Panorama Consulting, a whopping 64% of these projects go over schedule. And almost half of them, 45%, go over budget. It's a tough, tough road to get this right.
And if you ask why it's so tough, it really boils down to three main hurdles. First, the cost is just high. It's a huge upfront investment. Second, and this one is a monster, is poor data quality. The old saying, garbage in, garbage out, has never been more true. AI is smart, but it can't work with bad data. And third, you have plain old human resistance to change.
Let's put a number on that first hurdle, the cost. The average initial investment just to get an AI integration project started in a big company is around $500,000. That's a serious chunk of change that makes a lot of CFOs nervous.
And here is the perfect, real-world example of that data quality problem. When the pharmaceutical giant Novartis tried to use AI for their compliance monitoring, they hit a brick wall. Why? Their data was a complete mess. It led to a 9-month delay and blew up their budget by 40%. The lesson here is crystal clear. You have got to get your data house in order first.
But even with all these tough challenges, the momentum behind this shift is just undeniable. So let's look at what it's really going to take to build a company of tomorrow and where this whole thing is headed.
The market itself tells the whole story. In 2023, the AI ERP market was worth about $4.5 billion. The projection for 2033? $46.5 billion. That is a tenfold increase in just one decade. This isn't some passing fad, it's a fundamental change in how business is going to be done, period.
So what's the secret sauce for actually getting this right? Well, the companies that are succeeding are all following a pretty clear, phased strategy. It always starts with building a solid foundation of good data. From there, you have to invest in your people, training them, getting them on board, and finally, you have to be absolutely ruthless about planning every single step with a clear focus on the return on investment.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. The technology to build a truly predictive, proactive, self-adapting company, it's not science fiction anymore. It is here, it is now. The tech is ready.